Thank you for joining me in this video and welcome to our channel. My name is Cynthia Wakio, the Communication and Events Manager at Corporate Staffing Services. And today we're going to be looking at, focusing on employment contracts and the most important components of employment contracts. Join me and Paminas as we explore this topic. Karibu sana Paminas.
Thank you, Cynthia.
So employment contracts, why are they crucial in any organization, or rather every organization?
So there are three parties when it comes to an employment contract. So there's the individual being hired, that's the employee. Yes. Then there's the employer. And guess who's the third party?
The government?
Yes, the third party is the government. So the government is the one that regulates the relationship between the employer and the employee. Yes. So they have a stake. Why? Because if it was left to me, Cynthia, maybe I could tell you, no, you'll be working for 15 hours. You don't have to go for leave. I need you even to be bringing your food for the other staff members. So the government has a big say in terms of how the relationship is between the employer and the employee. So, and that is why the government will stipulate the bare minimum. So it's also not that the government you come and say, oh, this is how you're supposed to behave, A to Z, because the government cannot be able to cover everything. So, and this is where the unemployment contract comes in. So if from an employer point of view, you need first to be compliant, you know, with the government stipulation. So for example, whenever you're talking about an employment contract, there are certain things that you need to have there, and I'm sure we are going to discuss that. So number one is to make sure that you comply with the regulations, that's the labor laws. Yeah. And then also as an employer, you set out the expectation. You know, over and above what the government requires of me, what do I need to communicate to my employees so that at least they know at corporate staffing or company XYZ, this is what we would expect of you. So for me, the importance of employment contract is to bring clarity to the relationship as well as ensuring that both parties are compliant to the labor laws. Yeah.
So going back to what you said, when drafting an employment contract, which are the key components to include?
Good. So the law stipulates that there needs to be a job description. Then what is the salary? What is the location? What is the start date? What type of contract is this? Is it open-ended or what we call permanent, or is it fixed in the sense that someone is working for a defined period of time? Then also, who is this person reporting to? Yeah. Then in terms of now the other benefits, not actually, they are not even so much benefit because it's a requirement by law. Things like leave days, yeah. So how many leave days will you offer? So at a bare minimum, something like leave days, you find the government stipulates like 21 days. However, for you, you can say, okay, me, my staff, 26 or 30 days. When it comes also to working hours, it needs to be in the contract. So the law stipulates that an employee is supposed to work a maximum of 8 hours a day, and then 6 days a week. So they take a rest for 1 day. So that is why you find some employers, you'll find the staff for some professions, the staff works on Sunday, but then Monday is an off day for them. Yeah. So at a bare minimum, that's the information that you need to capture. However, like I said also as an employer, it's important also that you set the expectation. And that is why I would recommend, apart from like now having a job description, make sure you have KPIs by the time this person joins. So at least, you know, as they settle, you make sure at least you have KPIs and they signed off between the two parties. Yeah. Then over and above that, you can also have like a HR policy. Again, now that this is more in depth. Contract it's brief and direct to the point, but then if it's a HR policy, you'd have to have more details. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to employers when it comes to employment contracts?
Where we are now, since 2010, we've seen there's a lot of conflict between employers and employees. Yeah. And it's all based on misunderstanding. In fact, if you look, I was watching another video where a judge was explaining that from the year 2010, with the new constitutions, the cases that employees lodge at the employment court, I mean, every year they increase like by 1,000%. So you'd find way back in 2010, you probably have like less than 1,000, but now you find there are so many. It could be close to 50,000 a month, a year, sorry. Yeah. And the reason is because when you then set expectation from the beginning, then there's bound to be misunderstanding. Yeah. So you as an employer, it's your expectation. It's your obligation. Yeah. In fact, the law clearly states that if you have someone on board who's going to work for you for more than 2 months, then you need to issue them with a contract. If you don't, Cynthia, then it's their word against yours. Yes. So let's say I hire you and we agree on a salary of 20,000 shillings. But I pay you consistently for, let's say, 2-3 months. Then I fire you. If there was no contract, I can go to court and say, well, guess what? Pamina's promised to pay me 100,000 shillings and he's only been paying me 20,000. And the courts will ask you as an employer, which evidence do you have that you agree that this person should be paid 20,000 shillings? So you'll be forced to pay the balance. Yeah. So for me, compliance is a big issue. And so if you're an employer or a manager and you don't want headaches, so I would recommend, number one, if you don't have the HR expertise, you probably you don't have a HR on board, come to Corporate Staffing Services. We'll be able to advise you. There are instances where we even draft the employment contract on your behalf, you know, having sat with you, gotten to understand your requirements. And then you make sure that we make sure that the contract is compliant with the labor laws, and it's also fair to the employees. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And as you've heard, Corporate Staffing is your ideal HR expert. Whether you're struggling with your contracts, setting JDs or KPIs, here is the right place to come, and we will help you. We will leave a link below on our HR consultancy services for you to have a look at it and reach out to us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.